A labor organizer once told me that 2 conditions are necessary for a successful organizing campaign. First, people must believe that the status quo is bad, that current conditions are unjust. And second, people must believe that unfairness is not the natural and inevitable order of the world. They have to believe that change is possible. The idea has stuck with me. To make change, we need to acknowledge injustice, and we need hope. Last week's Torah portion ended with Moses telling Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. Pharaoh responds by saying, "Why do you distract the people from their tasks?" As punishment for Moses' insubordination, Pharaoh increases the Israelites' workload. No longer are they given straw to make bricks. They must gather the straw themselves. The people are even more burdened, more oppressed, and they turn to Moses in anger, saying, "May God look upon you and punish you for making us loathsome to Pharaoh and his courtiers, putting a sword in their hands to slay us." This week's Torah portion opens amidst this crisis of faith. The Israelites no longer trust Moses as a leader. Nobody can see a path to freedom. Moses entreats the Israelites to keep the faith. He recounts God's promise to them. "I will free you from the labors of the Egyptians and deliver you from their bondage. I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." But it doesn't work. Despite Moses' attempts at reassurance, we read, the Israelites would not listen to Moses, their spirits crushed by cruel bondage. We know how this story ends, but remember, the Israelites in our story do not. We should not judge them too harshly. They are suffocated by their labor, looking at a seemingly self-appointed leader who hadn't spent a day in his life gathering straw or making bricks, a leader who had only made things worse. The Israelites recognize that the situation is bad, but they have lost hope in any possibility of change. Nachmanides teaches that it is not that the Israelites don't believe in God or don't believe in Moses as a prophet, but that their constant labor drained them to the bones. They just wanted to get through the day. They had no brain space or soul space to envision a better future. And so, Moses' first charge as a leader is to reignite hope. He starts by turning to God. God offers reassurance, reiterating the promise to deliver the people Israel from the land of Egypt. Moses borrows strength from God to give strength to Israel. God next offers Moses practical help. Moses explains to God that the Israelites are not listening to him, and he fears that Pharaoh won't either. The Torah describes Moses as a man heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue, perhaps with a speech impediment, and he feels unfit for the job. A new strategy is called for. God suggests that Moses' brother Aaron accompany him as his mouthpiece when speaking to God. A formal team is developing. And then Moses starts doing. He instructs Aaron to throw his rod before Pharaoh's feet, where it turns into a serpent and swallows the serpents of the Egyptian magicians. And then the plagues. Moses asks Aaron to strike the Nile River with his rod, that all the waters of Egypt turn to blood. The rivers, canals, ponds, even the waters inside of vessels. He tells Aaron to hold his rod over the waters, and frogs rise up and cover the land of Egypt. He has Aaron strike the dusty ground with his rod, and the dust turns to lice. And then come the swarms of insects, then the pestilence that kills off Egyptian livestock. Then Moses flings handfuls of soot into the air, and it becomes a fine dust that causes boils to erupt on Egyptian skin. Then hail, and then our parsha ends 7 plagues down. It is only after the plagues are over that the biblical camera will pan back to the Israelites for their reaction. By then, their spark is back, their hope reignited, their leader has proven himself, they are ready to leave Egypt. Like the Israelites at the start of our parsha, sometimes we too cannot see beyond our burdens. When our forward-thinking ability fades, when we feel drained to the bones by work, caretaking, an unrelenting 24-hour news cycle, by the ceaseless pressures on our spirits and bodies that make it feel like change is impossible. What then? Moses, Israel's greatest leader and greatest prophet, was able to lend the people hope when they most needed it. Perhaps we too can borrow hope from a friend or from an inspirational leader. We can orient ourselves to see today's miracles, no less extraordinary than the plagues in Egypt, as evidence of God's hand in our world. A glimpse through the James Webb Space Telescope, looking at the glittering universe how it was 14 billion years ago, thousands of light years away. The miracle of modern medicine that frees children from death by polio, smallpox, and other devastating illnesses. Or even the laugh of someone you love, the astonishing beauty of which is beyond anything science can explain. We can cultivate hope through gratitude, recalling burdens that have been lifted and freedoms that have been regained. I believe the axiom is true: hope is a muscle, and a muscle worth cultivating. Hope is also a value, not an innate quality we are either blessed with or not. Hope is something we choose, just as we choose or aspire to be patient, open-minded, or diligent. Not an emotion, but a steely resilience that keeps us upright and moving. Hope is the posture of approaching the world ready to embrace possibilities, freedom, and redemption. In an episode of the podcast On Being, Brian Stevenson, founder of the Equal Justice Initiative, spoke about his great-grandfather who learned how to read while enslaved in Caroline County, Virginia. Stevenson said, "I just started thinking about the kind of hope, the kind of vision it took to believe that one day you're going to be free, even when nothing around you indicates that freedom is likely for enslaved Black people in Virginia in the 1850s. And yet he had that hope, and he learned to read, and he loved it so much that he wanted to share it with others. So my grandmother would talk about how, after emancipation, other formerly enslaved people would come to their home, and he would stand up and read the newspaper each night. And she would sit next to him because she loved the power he had to engage people, to make people feel calmer or more informed." This is a vision of freedom against all odds, a hope so certain it infects others. Like Miriam and the Israelite women who, when fleeing Egypt, packed timbrels, prepared to celebrate their freedom. Like Nachshon, the first Israelite to jump into the waves of the Red Sea, so sure that God would separate the waters. And like Moses, trusting God's promise, giving Israel confidence and courage along the way. This is the hope, the resilience that we can all cultivate. Shabbat Shalom.